Well, our crap saga continues. In addition to our starter motor stuff, yesterday I had a tour at 6. My wife is back down with us again. Her knee is okay, and so she had the kid, and I didn't have to worry about it. So I said yes to a 6 o'clock tour, and I got about 3 miles up there, and I just feel the truck, and it was just starting to cut out and die. So I turned it around immediately. I was not going to have I only had a few people on it, but I was not going to have them 7 miles up and walking down at 8 o'clock at night. So I get them to the bottom of the hill, and where I unloaded them, and the truck would idle, but it was surging, and I start to drive home, which is about 9 miles, and it's all downhill. And I got to the truck would run and then die, and then run and then die, and by the bottom, the run time was like run, and then there was maybe 12 seconds of dying, and run, and then 12 seconds of, and so I get it just across the street there. I mean, I'm blowing through stop signs and anything, just keep it rolling, keep it rolling, keep it rolling. And it dies across the street. So I go in and I move the gate and everything else, and I go to fire it up. Fires right back up. Drive it in here. What I have done is I started at the tank, and I pulled the vent lines, and I tested that the vent lines were good. And I pressurized the tank, and I tested that all the lines leading up to the fuel filter was good. My first thought was fuel filter, right? So I pull the fuel filter out. It's got some junk on it, but it's basically brand new. But I replaced it anyways, and then I pressurized and tested all those are good. And I pulled this main feed line out of the lift pump, and I stuck it in a 5-gallon bucket, and then I just shot air to the tank, put about 3 psi in there, and just let that 5 gallons of diesel just wash out. Nothing. So we're just beating our heads, and of course there is under that cap right there a little basket. I think they call it AF something filter. So I pull that out. There's a little stainless steel filter with a little magnet inside, and there's a few things sticking to the magnet. Nothing that would cause these problems. So I'm just beating my head against the wall. Had the truck shut down all day today as I just went through this. I checked the one-way return live valve, the check valve, and that's fine. It's opening at half a psi. And it got down to it, and this is where I'd be soliciting some opinions. I've heard of rare cases where the inside rubber of that hose would crack, and a little flap of rubber could potentially block and unblock. But I really tested that by just powering. I mean, I was blowing fuel through that hose at 10 times, 20 times what the engine takes, and nothing happened. It is my opinion that a failing lift pump, and in theory this lift pump has only 4,000 miles on it, but a failing lift pump would just deliver less and less and less and less pressure slowly over time. And the truck actually ran bad trying to coast it down the hill. And that leads me to this. This is the shut-off solenoid, and I know that they are persnickety. Our theory right now is that solenoid has gotten weak, and that the needle valve wasn't opening all the way. This truck's always been a dog compared to the other two, right? The needle valve wasn't opening all the way, and it was maybe the solenoid is just big spring behind it pushing it closed, and that maybe that's what it was doing, and that's why I could get the truck to run for a second and then not run and run and not run. So what I did is I screwed the override knob all the way in, and I just drove the truck around, and it drove fine. In fact, it drove better than fine. It had noticeably more horsepower. So I screwed the knob all the way back out, and right now everything seems to be working fine. So my current theory is that solenoid is a little weaker, a little gummy. And then by screwing it all the way in, I exercised that solenoid, and now it's working properly. But I should have a new one on the, in the mail. That's the opinion I'm soliciting. Has anybody experienced anything like that? It's a fuel issue. It's hands down a fuel issue. The motor was starving for fuel, and it just nothing. And then it'd come back for a second, nothing. And come back for a second, nothing. And it did that for 10 miles. And it isn't as if it has less and less power. It's just power, dead. Power, dead. I just don't think a gear-driven lift pump, because this thing, the injectors on this are all driven by the cam. So this is just a lift pump that feeds the injectors with whatever, 200 psi, whatever it is. It's actually not very high. I just don't think one of these would fail intermittently like that. And I noticed, it only dawned on me later, that each time after it died completely, and I'd look around and I'd poke things and test things or whatnot, and I'd try the key and she'd fire right back up like nothing was wrong. I'm thinking that I was just actuating that solenoid. Anyways, that's the opinion I'm trying to solicit. This thing has been a nightmare. It seems that'd be the type of thing that would go bad. I mean, this truck basically sat for 32 years. And if it only has 3,000 miles on it when I bought it, that's 1,000 miles a decade. So that'd be the type of thing that would gum up, wouldn't it? Anyways, soliciting opinions. As it stands now, it appears to be running just fine. Tomorrow morning I'll take it back up the hill, load it with people, and see if I can get it to crap out of cell range and way, way, way up in the woods, because that's just the way our luck has been going recently.